Hello and welcome to another Wednesday Tinto Talk where we have a look at all of the lovely new things coming in Project Caesar. Before we get into it, of course, look at this lovely little bit of artwork. This is, of course, some revolutionary artwork, it seems. And that does make sense. It's maybe not the time period that most people associate with the Europa Universalis franchise, but the game will be going around 500 years. So the French Revolution is certainly, in that period. So it makes sense that this will show up. At least I believe this is the French Revolution, but that flag doesn't have anything on it. It's just a red flag. So who knows? At the end of the day, it could be a completely different revolution that I don't know of. But either way, let us have a look at the Tinto talk itself. Welcome to another Tinto Talks. Happy Wednesday, when we talk about the most secret game with the code name Project Caesar. This week we'll be talking about ages and institutions, concepts that were first introduced in a patch to EU4. They're a convenient mechanic to make different areas feel different, but soon became too gamified, with development ruining the institution game. That's entirely fair and accurate. Development did ruin quite a lot of systems in EU4. Basically, the ability to develop for an institution made it so if you weren't playing in Europe, then this was just what you did. And even if you were playing in Europe, generally you did do this anyway because you wanted that institution as swiftly as possible, and it was worth developing for it. Every age introduces several new redacted, well, gosh damn it, adds several new possible government reforms you can pick from, impacts the price stability of goods, and also has some direct impacts on every country. In every age, the amount of gold you pay for your raised levies will increase. Interesting, okay. And the size of your army you're expected to have increases. Each age is global in the world, but its true impact is gradual. There's no special mana you gain through achieving goals that you can use to stack modifiers with, so we're not getting a Splendor mechanic. I do think this is interesting, right? The size of your army you're expected to have increases. Who exactly is it expecting, and what are the penalties for not meeting this expectation is the question that I would have and put forth. But anyway, let's have a look here. We have a Research tab and the Ages tab. Research tab looking interesting, but also a lot smaller than I would have been expecting. I can't zoom in on this one, unfortunately. So the Age of Traditions was founded... Okay, so feudalism was founded in Aachen, legalism founded in Rome, meritocracy founded in Beijing. Okay, this is super interesting. There are 3 institutions founded in the Age of Traditions. In the Age of Renaissance, we have Renaissance banking, professional armies. Then for Discovery, New World printing press, pike and shot. Age of Reformation, confessionalism. I feel like that's just awkward. And they're here as well with industrial. Just make it a smudge. Just give it a smudge of space. Give it a little bit of a smudge. But yeah, we have confessionalism, global trade, and artillery. Interesting. In the Age of Absolutism, we have manufactories, scientific revolution, and military revolution. And in the Age of Revolutions, we have the Enlightenment, industrialization, and levée en masse. Okay. I mean, this is the name of an idea in quantity ideas, which is interesting that it exists here, for sure. But yeah, actually, does that get smaller when I try and zoom in? I guess so. The Age of Traditions have passed, and we just entered the Age of Renaissance here. So this is not in, this wasn't taken at the start of the game. But yeah, feudalism founded in Aachen. I wonder if that is... I mean, feudalism would have been a thing in 1337. I feel like this is at the start of the game. This is already there. And this meritocracy, it looks like, is ticking up. So whoever they are playing as right now, I feel like maybe they have these already and they're about to gain these. Or they've just unlocked meritocracy and it's ticking up to its full potential, because they say here, where is it? The impact is gradual. So the impact of meritocracy is maybe only, what's that, like 20%? Um, roughly about 20%, like, through its impact. So yeah, maybe that's what that is, and these haven't been founded yet. So potentially, whoever they're playing as here could be someone like a Yuan or Delhi. So basically, somewhere in Asia is what I am feeling for this. Each age has 3 institutions that will spawn. Each will unlock redactedness. I imagine this is going to be just technologies and spread across the world. We designed the institution spawns to be more rigid for the first ages and more flexible in later ages to guide the game in a certain direction. This is the same as in EU4, to be fair. For those of you who dislike the dynamic spawning of institutions, you can put it in historical mode, which will spawn in the same location every time. I feel dynamic spawning is going to be the way to go, for me at least. There are only 2 options for this rule at the moment. Okay, makes sense. The spread takes time, as it can only spread through adjacent locations or across a single sea lane, unless you have trade routes from a market center that have embraced it. So trade is going to be super duper important. This is something, right? This is the same as in EU4, unless you have something that is spreading, like manufacturing institution will spread in any province that has a manufacturer, for example. But that, I wouldn't say that is like spread. That is more like spawn. Spread is from, adjacent provinces and sea tiles. So this is fine for me. This is the same. But this is something that EU4 does not have. So I really, really like this. I like that this has been added. I think this is a really nice progression of the system. Having trade impact it makes just complete sense. Speed of spreads is impacted by the literacy of the population, so high literacy is very important there. If you have embraced an institution, then it will spread in proportion to your control in your owned locations. All right. So I feel like we're not going... Okay, here we go. How much you need then. When an institution has spread to more than 10% of the population in your country, you can embrace it, meaning you will gain access to the redactedness it will give you. So you just need to get it to 10%. Is there going to be a cost associated with embracing it? Because it doesn't look like it based on this. EU4, of course, you had a gold cost. Here, it doesn't look like there's going to be a cost. As the technology system in Project Caesar is different from the one in EU4. And pray tell, what relevance would EU4 have here? Maybe you could say it's different from March of the Eagles, or different from anything we've had before. What relevance, pray tell, does EU4 have in this situation? Is that because this is a sequel to EU4? Pray tell. Missing an institution for a while is not a complete disaster, but more on that next week. Okay, love that. Missing an institution in EU4 is, well, what they say it here, complete disaster. Increasing your technology cost so incredibly much for every technology that you take, where you should have that institution. The first one, not too bad, but I would never take the second institution technology without having the institution. This I'm very much looking forward to. Like, we're gonna get technology system next week. Hell yeah! Tech in EU4 is completely linear, whereas here I have a feeling it's not going to be quite so linear. And maybe I'll go into why I think that after we finish this dev diary. But obviously, as well, maybe just to put a little aside in the middle of the video here, maybe you should subscribe, because I forgot to ask you to do that at the start of the video. Subscribe, you gain knowledge, and I gain a sub. It's a win-win. Anyway. In later ages, you can also start assigning a member of your cabinet to promote institutions in a province. So, unless this is a misspeak, because I'm sure a lot of people are, misspeaking province to location right now. This is going to be in an entire, area, instead of a single tile, which will then progress any institution you're aware of in the locations of that province. Okay, so it is not a misspeak. It is the full province. Promoting is heavily based on the burghers and the literacy of a location. Okay, depending on how much later ages, I feel like this is just going to be 100%, as soon as we have these later ages, we're doing this, because it's it looks like it's going to be very, very important. There are 6 ages in the game, and in 3037 we start in the Age of Traditions, and each age from there lasts about a century. More art. Nice. This looks like it's event art, or, you know, yeah, because it's around about the same aspect ratio as you see in events in EU4. I wonder where this art is going to be in the game, though. Because this is Age 1 Traditions.jpg. But here, it doesn't look like there is space for art. And does this castle, I don't think... It's not the same as this castle, so... Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where this art is going to be placed. But anyway, for the Age of Traditions, different societies have been established throughout the world for hundreds and thousands of years, and their foundations can be framed in traditions such as legalism, meritocracy, and or feudalism. So yeah, this is obviously the 3 options: feudalism, legalism, meritocracy. Nice, a little bit of a explanation as for what it is. But anyway, legalism. We gave this institution a spawn point of Rome, even though there are plenty of places that could compete for it. Most of the old world has this institution spread and embraced at the start of the game. The theories behind legalism have been integrating into Chinese societal structures for hundreds of years. The concept that pure idealism and domestic stability leads to a rich, prosperous state and a powerful army is deeply rooted in the forms of thought in Eastern Asian domains. However, as merchants and migrants brought forth the exchange of ideas, the concept of legalism made its way across the vast expanses of the Muslim world. There, it adopted a stance of symbiotic relationship between heathens and believers in Islamic states. Legalism in Europe signified this rite of passage from the dying grasp of the great Roman Empire. I mean, it's still alive in 1337, but, you know, whatever. It is dying, though, I guess. To its remnant legal roots, many of which would later serve as the basis for this new jurisprudence across the old continent. Very cool. I like having a little bit of an explanation as what it is. Cool. Meritocracy has the birthplace in Beijing at the start of the game, and it is only spread through East Asia. Many individuals of a great prestige and in positions of power often chose to appoint those closest to them in influential spots. The advent of meritocracy as an institution and thought movement was largely popular in the courts of imperial China. There, Confucius himself supported the notion that those who govern should do so on the basis of merit, not on inherited status. This led to the replacement of the Chinese nobility of blood ties to one based solely on meritocratic abilities. The institution's development would ripple across the borders of Asia and would eventually reach the royal courts of even European monarchs whose nobles had a firm grasp on the mechanisms of power and authority. This is an institution that is actually in Mayo and Taxes. It's an institution that obviously the Chinese have at the start of the game and basically nowhere else, because it's obviously that mod starts in 1356, and it is actually very, very difficult to get this thing to spawn in Europe or spread to Europe. Like, you could spend the entire game trying to make that a thing and probably still fail. I'm pretty sure in my run as Empire of the Romans into Roman Empire, which lasted until about 1800-ish, I imagine, I can't remember, I don't think I spawned meritocracy at the end of it, whereas I'd had all the other institutions. But yeah, this it does feel like they're taking inspiration from maybe Mayo and Taxes for having this, or though maybe it's just this is the obvious choice, right, for an institution for a game that starts in 1337. So maybe, you know, it's not actually about Mayo at all. Feudalism has its birthplace in Aachen, the capital of the Western Roman Empire. Just don't just call it the Roman Empire. It's the because the Roman Empire already existed, and it was in Constantinople. I feel like this was written purely by Johann as Lambert's going to have a problem with this. Lambert's going to mention this. Lambert's going to be like, nah. I know, I'm on to you, Johann. I'm on to you. I know you. Hope you're having a good day. It spread in most of the old world as well. Over time, most societies develop a need for common structure with stronger and more permanent institutions of government. After the fall of the Roman Empire, still exists, my brother. This need came to be filled by a number of institutions and customs that, taken together, are often considered to be part of the European feudal system. For similar reasons, permanent government and societal systems have formed all over the world, some of which have roots that go back farther than feudalism itself. And we have this piece of art that we actually have seen before. This is not the first time we have seen this artwork, but it's nice. So nice, cool, I like it. I wish I could have like a bigger image of it though. Like if I open a new tab, it's still not that big. Have we shown this? Yes, you have. Yes, indeed, you have. Age of Renaissance. A new era of knowledge, arts, and progress is emerging due to growing interactions and institutions in the medieval societies affected by Pax Mongolica, the Islamic Golden Age, and the European Renaissance. Honestly, I obviously have heard of Pax Romanica, Pax Britannica. We're currently in Pax Americana. I've never heard the term Pax Mongolica. Like, I can accept and understand why that is a thing that exists. Like, the Mongol Empire was pretty frickin' huge. But I've just never heard of the term Pax Mongolica before. That is actually the first time. The Renaissance institution will spawn soon after the age starts in a northern Italian city with a university. So, with a university means that this is not a building that you have to wait until 1550 or whatever to build, which I like very much. The historical location is Florence. Starting in the 14th century, the wealthy and powerful in the Italian city-states have been patronizing artists and scholars willing to explore the old Roman and Greek societies of their forefathers. As a cultural movement, the Renaissance already encompasses most of the region and has a profound impact on literature, art, philosophy, and music. Humanist scholars are also analysing the society in which they live, comparing it to the ideals of the classical philosophers. Renaissance humanism has grown into a more mature movement, ready to permeate all aspects of society. A new ideal for rulers, as well as those who are ruled, is spreading as quickly as the early printers can distribute copies of these new ideas. A true Renaissance humanist is an expert on everything from politics and philosophy to art, textual analysis, music, and architecture. Renaissance is now ready to reshape the world to better fit its classical ideals. Yeah, that's pretty much Renaissance. I like that there is no mention of, the Roman Empire has died. All of the Greek, Romaioi, it would be more accurate, scholars and people have fled Constantinople and come to Italy and spread Roman ideas into Italy, and therefore Renaissance. Because that is it's pop history and actually doesn't have much in the way of, like, accuracy. It's been pretty widely dismissed by historians, but it is still very pop history, right? I'm glad that there's no mention of that. I'm glad they're not falling into the trap of pop history. So that is awesome, honestly. Banking can spawn in any town or city with more than 1,000 burghers in Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East, where the owner has a strong capital economy, societal value. The historical location is Genoa. Okay, question for this. If we go with the historical sites for institution spawn locations, right? If we choose this option, institution spawn historical, so it will spawn in Genoa. Does it have to still fulfill the obligations here? What if I'm playing as Milan and I go down and declare war upon Genoa and I just ravage the place? I make it absolutely god-awful. I kill it so that, there aren't 1,000 burghers in Genoa. I don't know if I could even affect a change in this in Genoa, but say even I'm playing as Genoa and I decide to go against capital economy and do the opposite societal value. I decided to destroy all of my burgher improving buildings. Will the institution find a new spawn point, or will it spawn in Genoa regardless? That is the question. Also, I would have expected Venice, but I guess maybe I'm wrong. Anyway. Money lending has existed since metal-based coins appeared in antiquity. However, it depended on some individuals and their family groupings, on or on the ancient states. Sorry, missed that, word. A shift occurred in the Middle Ages, encouraged by the renewed growth of long-range commercial activities in the Eurasian continent and its peripheries. Specialized moneylenders began to organize when Jewish communities started operating between the Christian and Islamic worlds. However, the boom of credit demand that followed the Crusades in the 12th century encouraged merchants in the Italian city-states to create larger structures for moneylending, effectively founding the first banking institutions such as the Peruzzi and Bardi houses. These are two names that we have heard before, very, very early on, that will be these are tags that don't have any land, but it is unclear as to whether we'll be able to play as them or not, because they were described as countries, and in another comment, Johan has said that we can only play as countries using very specifically the same word. So it might be possible that we can play as the Perusian Bardi houses here, even though they don't own any land. That's crackpot theory. Let's go. More instruments were developed in like bills of exchange and debt bonds, and banking dynasties such as the Medici, Fugger, or Welser soon became as powerful as states. I like that. It is not an uncommon theory, this idea that we will be able to play as non-land owning states, right? I know Leanna Hafer, who is a freelance journalist for IGN mostly, and does the 3 Moves Ahead podcast, and Father Loris, who works on the Chapel Comics. We do a podcast maybe once a month or so talking about EU5. I'll put a link to that in the description. We do the 3 Moves Ahead podcast about EU5, and they are fully convinced that you can play as these non-landowning states. I was a little bit less convinced, but maybe I'm on the fence about it. Let's say I'm on the fence about it. I think it would be cool. I just have no concept of how that would play. I wouldn't even know how to begin to come up with an idea of how that would play. So, yeah, I guess my ignorance makes me question it more than anything. But anyway, professional armies. These can spawn in any location in Europe which has some manpower produced, where the owner has a quality societal value. The historical location is in Paris. Armies have existed since war was invented, many thousands of years ago. However, their form has changed over the centuries, and different types of recruitment and organization have developed in different cultures and periods. In the late Middle Ages, armies in a wide range of societies relied on levies based on the structures of feudal society, with knights and footmen form a corps that was levied seasonally. In some regions, however, states were powerful enough to finance standing armies, with professional soldiers who would be available for duty throughout the year. This system was also developed in Europe after the outbreak of the 100 Years' War, being one of the main changes that promoted a military revolution in the early modern age, increasing the size and quality of professional armies while finding new sources of revenue to finance them. Soon became one of the main challenges for rulers around the world. Cool. Love that. I'm loving this flavor text. I really am. Really, really nice. We have, looks like Spanish conquistadors. I guess this is more colonialism. Yeah, it's the Age of Discovery, I guess. Makes sense. Looks like a nice place to add to the Spanish Empire for sure. It is actually kind of gorgeous. You know, a little bit of a waterfall, or a few waterfalls there. Love it. The Age of Discovery, though. At the dawn of the early modern era, new continents are being mapped while feudal society is slowly giving way to centralized states. For an enterprising state, this age can see the foundation of a worldwide empire. So, the New World. It will spawn in any port in Western Europe or North Africa, with more than 2,000 burghers, and where the owner has discovered the Azores and the West African coastline. The historical location is Sevilla. I would have expected Porto, if I'm being honest, but yeah, no, Sevilla works too. Interesting they call it New World as an institution. I would say maybe colonialism might be a better name for it, but I don't know. What do I know? The discovery of the New World has heralded a new era not only for colonizers and the colonized, but also led to the spread of materials and techniques, as well as a realization of the vastness of the globe. As animals, crop types, silver, and diseases spread across the Atlantic, the first steps have been taken towards a truly global economy. With foreign lands and people being mapped and documented, ideas as well as religious and philosophical debate are increasingly being coloured by what we have found in overseas societies. Great minds feel the need to question what was once truth, and from Valladolid to Fatehpur Sikri, the nature of the world is now up for debate. One thing I just want to point out here is things that are spreading across the globe, right? Silver and diseases and animals and crop types going back and forth across here. We know that there will be a Colombian exchange, right? That is going to be a situation. I'm pretty sure that was confirmed in one of the comments on the Situations Dev Diary. So we're going to see, horses arrive in the New World. We're going to see potatoes arrive in the Old World. And we're going to see smallpox kind of just destroy the North American population. The most popular estimate at the moment is that 90% of the population of North America was wiped out by diseases spread by European colonizers. And while I think you don't need to have exactly 90% of populations in the New World wiped out via, diseases in game, I think it does need to be very destructive. It does need to be, apocalyptic if you are playing one of those tags. I think they don't need to make it exactly 90, but I think, having it be something that you're really not able to do much about, you're not able to mitigate it all that much, but have it be somewhere between like 70 to 90% of population would die from it, I think would be the most faithful to history, is what I would say. I think that should be in the game, even though it's fucking diabolical. I think that should be in the game, and it should be as apocalyptic as it was historically. But on to printing press, more on lighter news. Printing press, yay. This can spawn in any location with more than 2,000 burgers, where the owner produces more than 5 paper and has an outward societal value. Historical location is mines. I do like that the amount of burgers required is going up. I do find it interesting that it is just burgers, right? Institutions are formed by burgers. They're not formed by clergy or nobles. It's all about the burgerage. The ability to mass produce the written word would revolutionize the spread of information and in many ways early modern society as a whole. Pioneered by Renaissance men such as Venetian printer Aldus Manutius, the new art helped fuel the Renaissance by making the translated classics more widely available. Later, the Reformation benefited greatly from the ability to spread critical publications and translations of the Holy Scriptures. Now that printing has matured as a technique and spread throughout Europe, hundreds of thousands of copies of everything from religious and political pamphlets to scientific treatises and instructions on how to behave are circulating the continent. With print shops growing ever more commonplace, rulers have found it hard to contain the new technique as the comparatively easy means of production means censorship can be sidestepped by moving business across a border, or even just changing the name on a title page. Yeah, it's really quite interesting how revolutionary the printing press was. Before that, the only books that were really, I wouldn't even say mass-produced, but produced, were things like the Bible. And it was generally just in Latin as well. Printing press also heralded the ability to, have those translated and widely spread translations instead of individual copy translations. Because obviously to get yourself a Bible, you needed somebody to write it for you, and generally the people who were being capable of writing them were the people who generally didn't want to translate it. So yeah, printing press is absolutely colossally important. So yeah, it definitely makes sense in an institution. Pike and shot. This spawns in a location which has some manpower produced, where the owner has professional armies, more than 20 army tradition, and a land societal value, and has the gunpowder technology. Here is another element here that I would like to talk about at the end, about technology, but we will get back to it. The historical location is Innsbruck in Germany. A new type of warfare began to develop at the end of the 15th century, in the midst of the Italian Wars. The generalization of pikemen in the late Middle Ages as an alternative to men-at-arms who would successfully face heavy cavalry charges was accompanied by the development of portable firearms, mainly matchlock arquebuses and muskets. The soldiers now adopt a new formation, in which the pikemen form a square, while the arquebusiers fan out to the sides and front, and seek cover behind or inside the square in case the formation enters close combat. This new type of formation, called pike and shot, was favoured by the German Landsknechts and Spanish tercios, and was soon adopted by other armies, reigning supreme on European battlefields for nearly 2 centuries, until superseded by the early 18th century by line infantry formations armed with new flintlock muskets mounting bayonets. And we have some Reformation art here as well. Quite lovely. The heretic is trying to defend his heresy. Absolutely. The age of Reformation. Let's go. From east to west, this is the age of religious conviction, debates, and mass movements. In Europe, the Protestant churches are entrenched, while millenarianism takes hold of Iran and religious syncretism shapes Indian society. So we have confessionalism. This spawns in a town or city in Europe which has a printing press, the owner is a Catholic, and the dominant religion is Catholic, and it has a spiritualist societal value. Historical location is Augsburg. Catholicism has been regarded as a unitary entity for a long time, but the advent of various Protestant faiths has put an end to that. With the rise of myriad of different interpretations of what faith should be, Christianity is all but united. But where before any deviance from the church could be easily labelled as heretical, now the lines creating the differences become blurrier at least. As such, there has been an increasing interest, both for religious and secular authorities alike, to clearly define the shapes of their specific confessions, enforcing their particular rules and views on all aspects of faith and life. This allows them a more firm grip on the faith of their population, but also increases the differentiation and thus animosity with all other confessions. I wonder, okay, so we're going to get... I'm curious as to what this is going to confer. Like, everything else has been like, yes, that makes sense. This makes sense what this is going to do to our society. Here, is this basically ushering in the, like the 30 Years' War? Is this ushering in religious leagues? Increasing the differentiation and animosity with other, like, Christian faiths? Is that what we're getting here? And how does confessionalism affect other parts of the world that aren't Christian? The way I kind of understood it is that the institutions were global, that while they had a spawn point and they had an origin, they would be things that would affect any country that embraced it. What is an Islamic country going to benefit from accepting or embracing confessionalism? Is this a purely Christian institution? That is a question that I would like to put forth, and maybe if you have an answer to that, leave it in the comment section below. And while you're there, throw it a like as well, because, I don't know, I feel like that might be, something that you could do that would be nice. Anyway, global trade. It spawns in a market centre, in a city anywhere in the world that has amongst the most value of goods traded. Historically, the location is Lisbon. I suppose that makes sense. I was hoping maybe a little bit of London, but Lisbon is fine, I guess. Goods have been moved across continents since antiquity, but where this was previously limited to a set number of routes and goods, such as the manufactured goods of India and China finding their way across the Indian Ocean and along the Silk Road, all trade is now increasingly becoming part of a greater world network. With the discovery of the Americas, sea routes around Africa, and the crossing of the Pacific Ocean, local trade networks are being connected to one world-spanning interconnected web. Silver mined in the Andes is being boxed and taken via Europe all the way to China and India. Iron mined and wrought in Scandinavia is being sold in West Africa by English merchants, and others are making a fortune just distributing cloth and spices within Southeast Asian trade spheres. Local Indian merchants are investing in future European trade ventures. It may be still early to speak of a truly global economy, but surely the first seeds have been sown. Global trade, huge, love that. Expected it to be here. Artillery. This is an interesting one as well, because obviously artillery would have been used up here, but now it's getting its own institution in and of itself. This will spawn in any city in the world that has a gunsmith and a metal workshop where the owner has an offensive societal value. The historical location is Constantinople. This is an interesting one because, of course, this institution is going to spawn after the death of the Roman Empire, who owns Constantinople at the start of the game. So, essentially, the historical location and the historical version of events that would lead to artillery would be it spawning in the Ottoman Empire. So this would be Constantini instead. So even if Constantinople isn't conquered by the Turks and remains Constantinople, remains Roman, it will still spawn there if you have the historical location setting on. And what does it really imply? Because while artillery was the reason that Constantinople fell, getting those huge bombard cannons from, not Carl Urban, he's an actor. Somebody Urban. I know his surname was Urban, but I forget what the first name was. It's not Carl Urban. Different guy. Different guy. But is that why artillery is spawning in Constantinople? Because the first use of artillery in a world-shaping way was in Constantinople? But then, if that's the case, that was in 1453, and the artillery institution here looks like it's spawning in 1550-ish. So I don't know. The invention of gunpowder in Song, China, led to the development of a new device that would employ its firepower in warfare, the artillery. Although it spread throughout Eurasia in the 13th century, its use as a common weapon system did not happen until the 15th century, as improvements in the cannon length and gunpowder recipe made artillery much more powerful, now posing a threat to stone-built castles and fortifications, the most common in Europe. Soon, artillery will be used not only in sieges but also on battlefields, as smaller caliber guns now feature the mobility required to be quickly deployed and used. Its final development as a key warfare system would come in the 18th century, especially after Napoleon perfected its use at key points during battles. While I despise this man, yeah, he was pretty good with his artillery. That's fair. That's fair. It's very fair. Age of absolutisms. As governments wrest the absolute power in their countries from other parties, they're now able to devote themselves to the building of empires. This is the age of the state, of rulers and their armies. Manufactories will spawn in any location, with more than 100 building levels. Okay, that's huge. That is a sign of what we are aiming at in this game. How many buildings we are going to be building in a location. 100 building levels. Of course, not every building is limited to just like one level, right? Some buildings, maybe most buildings, you can upgrade them. So, having a level 10 iron mine, for example. But 100 building levels is sort of what we're aiming at when manufactories spawn. And 20,000 burgers is such a huge step up from what we've seen before. A huge, huge, huge step up. Very, very interesting to see this. This is very telling. Honestly, this is very telling of where the game is aiming at as the game progresses. Because everything we've seen so far in the Tinto talks has all been, this is the setup in 1337. This is here, the setup in 1337. By the way, 1337, this is what we've got. Now we're looking at basically 20,000 of a higher tier pop in, well, the historical location is Derby. Okay, I want to check something out. Okay, so here is the Tinto thread on Great Britain and Ireland, right? Derby is right here. You can see Derby right here. And if we go to the population map, obviously this is 1337, and manufactories is long, long into the future. But kind of the population growth that we might be expecting, if we are to get to 20,000 burgers, Derby has a population of 29,786 at the very start of the game. And by the time manufactories rock up, you're expecting 20,000 population in this territory, in this location, to be burgers. This, I think, is very, very telling of what kind of population growth we can be expecting, and more like the stratification of that population as the game progresses. This is honestly probably the biggest bit of information that we've received in this dev diary so far. Right? I feel like this is huge. This is really, really huge. I love this. But anyway, they need a capital economy societal value, and it will spawn in Derby. While the number of technical innovations during the course of the 16th and 17th centuries have increased the output of production for some products, such as iron or cloth to an extent, the biggest improvement in the field of production has come in the form of new forms of organization. By creating manufactories, often outside the city limits, merchant capitalists can both bypass the ancient guild laws that inhibit mass production and pioneer ways to increase production through the organization and specialization of labor in one place. The forerunners of the later industrialization were able to increase output by facilitating access to raw materials and mass organization of labor rather than by expensive new machinery. This in itself is a huge change over the heavily regulated methods of old. However, and together with later technical advances, this new mode of production will come to revolutionize society, and I think industrialization is another very, very related institution that will spawn a bit later on as well. But we're moving on to the scientific revolution. Spawns in location with a university and a high average literacy, where the owner has an innovative societal value. The historical location is Cambridge. Okay, so we're really getting into, this is when Britain became big dog. It's clear that the world is smaller now than ever before. The rise of global trade in the printing industry has led to an increased flow of people and ideas, allowing for a more widespread dissemination of knowledge. This in turn resulted in a more thorough questioning and analysis of the reality of the world. What was once just accepted as fact is now questioned. What was only poorly understood is now observed, and what was only supposed tested. The recent advancements in areas such as mathematics, physics, or biology are undeniable. But the real revolution is the change in the perception and approach towards science itself and the way of understanding it. Systematic experimentation is the true scientific revolution, and it will surely change completely our conception of the world. Very cool, loving that. The military revolution, it can spawn in any capital with a lot of military buildings that has a population over 50,000. Historical location is Stockholm, so this is really referencing the Gustavus Adolphus revolutions in military warfare. I think they call it GoPo. It's basically go forward, or I guess literally go on. Basically, the Swedish infantry would just march forward, keep marching forward, and while their enemy is taking very badly aimed long-range shots, the Swedish infantry would basically hold their shots until they were close enough to do a single, absolutely devastating volley into their enemy and make sure, their shots hit. And it was very, very effective until it very, very wasn't. Basically, it was effective until it wasn't. But yeah, I think this is what it's referencing is GoPo. The continuous state of war affecting Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries leads to a sharp increase in the size of armies as a necessity born of the growing authority of competing absolutist regimes. The infantry is now armed en masse with flintlock muskets, greatly increasing their firepower and performance in battle by being deployed in the innovative line formation, replacing the old pike and shot. Those needs also affect the capabilities of the state administration, as it continues to expand to handle the manpower and finances required by this increase in the size of the military. That also is spearheading the development of the supply chains required to feed and sustain armies, through intermediate depots that support the operational armies. The result of these advances would be none other than an upsurge in wars between increasingly militarized countries in the 17th century. Very cool. And yes, this is definitely a revolution image, because it's one way to deal with nobility. The Age of Revolutions. Let's get into this one as well. Spawns in a location with a university, high average literacy, where the owner is innovative, scientific value. The historical location is Paris, or Paris. The last century has seen rationalism and empiricism gaining an ever-increasing popularity among the great minds of the age. In letters, publications, and coffee houses, kings, scientists, philosophers, and literateurs are discussing the merits of tolerance, the scientific method, and the spreading of the ideals of the Enlightenment to all of humanity. From universities or courts of enlightened monarchs, expeditions are being sent to measure, catalogue, weigh, and map the world so that we may better understand the laws that govern everything around us. Others discuss the laws that govern society and try to reach an understanding of the rights of man. Great projects such as the colossal undertaking of creating a complete encyclopedia of all knowledge or a complete index of all plants, animals, and fungi in the world are being pursued for the greater good of humanity. The light of reason has been lit, and many will not rest until it's been brought to all corners of the earth. Very cool. Industrialization will spawn in any location with more than 250 building levels, 20,000 burgers where the owner has a capital economy, societal value, and the historical location is Blackburn. Let us go and find Blackburn. Alright, so this highlights maybe an issue, because Blackburn isn't a location that we saw in this image. Blackburn would be where Lancaster is. So I'm thinking maybe it's in one of the updated maps that we don't actually have the population numbers for. So Blackburn is roughly, it's north of Liverpool and Manchester, so it's around where Lancaster is. At the start of the game, it would have somewhere, I imagine it's going to be taking some pops from here, so something around here, whatever population it ends up being, it won't be any of these numbers, I imagine, unless it just renames Lancaster, but I definitely don't think that's true. But yeah, Blackburn around about here-ish. The dawn of the 18th century gave rise to many institutions. Man's thirst for growth took hold. Advances in the field of production and manufacturing, as well as the introduction of complicated machinery, will change the world as we know it on a global scale. The rise of the Industrial Revolution brings about international and lasting changes, not just in commerce and business, but in the fabric of society itself. Inventions such as the power loom and steam engines shall push the capabilities of mankind to its highest zenith yet. Very cool indeed. And finally, we have levee en masse. Can spawn in any capital with a lot of military buildings that has a population over 200,000, where the owner has a defensive societal value. Historical location is Paris, and this, I guess, is the only location in the world that has two institutions spawning in it, historically. None of the others have two, as far as I can tell. Warfare is an ever-evolving concept, innovated and honed generation after generation. The 18th century saw the rise of powerful empires, each with its own ambitions. To satisfy the need for expansion and provide the fuel necessary to fulfill these ambitions, new nationwide conscription laws will be drafted and signed in effect, raising armies of all unmarried young men, the size of which will shape the course of history. I love this. I love this very much. Next week we'll talk about technology and the national idea system. Yo, I wasn't expecting to have this as well. That is freaking awesome. Now, if you will permit me and moment to talk about technology, I am of the opinion that obviously technology is going to change. It's kind of the nature of technology. But it's not going to be the same as we have in EU4. We are not getting admin, diplomacy, military, and it being a linear, three-lined, push into the future. That's not going to be the case. What we've seen, if we just do a quick search on this page for technology, here. The gunpowder technology. I have a feeling that technology is going to be more akin to what we have seen in Imperative for their innovations system, and I guess maybe we can look that up a second. So here, of course, is the Imperative technology screen. We have a linear. This is four different types. Linear expansion here, but with every expansion that you have of these advances, you gain a technology that you can then choose, right? So choose military artisans, then learning on the job, etc. You can see how many they have right here. I am of the opinion that potentially we could be getting something similar in Project Caesar, because talking about the gunpowder technology, I'm expecting the gunpowder technology to basically be an innovation. And it's not the first time that we've been told about technologies that makes me think this way. From a previous dev diary, we were talking about written word being a technology. And it doesn't make sense to name, an EU4 tech level as the written word, but it does make sense to name an individual block or an individual element as a technology. So I'm of the opinion that we might be getting something along the lines of the innovation system, which I do quite enjoy, but I don't think it's going to be identical at all. I don't think we're going to get this kind of completely open tree that you can ignore like things in. I think it's going to be more segregated and segmented and such. But that's basically my thoughts on that. But I guess we're going to wait and see next Wednesday. It's going to be an exciting time. If you would like to make sure that you're available and you see that video and you get to know all about the technology in EU5, because let's be honest, this is EU5, and we shan't be beating around the bush on that one. You should hit the subscribe button. It's just, I keep pushing on it, but it is just the best way. You hit the subscribe button, you get, press the bell as well. Get informed when I upload a video, and basically all of my videos nowadays are all EU5 related, so you stay informed. I get a sub, it's a win-win. And with that said, I want to thank you all very much for watching. This has been one of the longest Wednesday Tinto talks. I think probably the longest, I'm not sure. But I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the fact that they put all of this basically flavor text to tell us about these institutions. I really, really like that. I think the system's going to work. It looks way better than what we have as its equivalent in EU4. So, big W there. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on Friday for the Tinto maps of the Balkans, which I am assured will be completely controversy-free. I'm certain of it. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.